Doppelganger is German for double walker and are paranormal duplicates of a real person. The doppelganger doesn't cast any shadow, and meeting one's doppelganger can sometimes be a bad omen. You may encounter them in many ways. You may meet them on a lonely road or see them standing behind you when you're looking in a mirror. Sometimes a doppelganger can't be seen by the person at all, but instead manifests to other people, either standing next to or in another location. It may even cooperate with the person or assist them with tasks. There are many explanations for the doppelganger phenomenon. They may even be a spiritual copy of the person. However, for some unfortunate people, they are a foretelling of their imminent death. The following are 8 people, some of them significant historical figures who encountered their doppelgangers. Number 8, Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln was very open about his interest in the paranormal and experienced some paranormal activity of his own. On the night of his first election, he was resting on his couch and happened to glance in a mirror and saw that he had 2 faces. However, his second face looked pale and ghostly and was looking right at him from the mirror, right next to his own face. Stunned from this experience, he rose from the couch and the doppelganger just disappeared. He sat back down only to see it again. Although Lincoln was shocked, his wife Mary had also observed this strange happening and was absolutely terrified. She saw the doppelganger as a bad omen and a double-edged sword, where it was a certain sign that Lincoln would be re-elected for a second term, because seeing 2 of her husband's heads would mean that he would be elected to 2 terms. But the bad omen would mean that seeing his ghostly apparition would mean that he wouldn't survive that second term, as the second Lincoln looked deathly pale. Lincoln went on to repeat the couch experience with his doppelganger one more time, but after that it stopped appearing. Maybe it had delivered its message, and as we all know, Lincoln did not make it through his second term. Number 7, Goethe. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe was a famous German writer, poet and politician who had experiences with his doppelgangers. In his autobiography, Poetry and Truth, he tells the following story. When I was a young man, I was leaving the house of a young woman named Frederick and was feeling rather depressed. He then looked up to see a person riding towards him. But the strange thing was that he did not see them as an actual person through his eyes, but as a mental image in his mind. But what shocked him most was that the man he was looking at was himself, but was wearing different clothes. The mental image suddenly disappeared, and Goethe thought nothing of it and forgot about it. 8 years later, he was on horseback, coming down the same road to visit the same woman. However, it suddenly occurred to him that he was wearing the exact same clothes that he'd seen his doppelganger wearing 8 years previously. This was not the only time that Goethe saw a doppelganger. On another occasion, he saw his friend, Frederick, on the street wearing Goethe's own dressing gown. Confused, he arrived home to find that his friend was sitting in his lounge wearing the very same dressing gown that moments before he'd seen him wearing in the street. Goethe had seen the doppelganger of his friend. His friend explained that he'd got himself wet in the rain and put on Goethe's dressing gown while his own clothes dried. Number 6. Catherine the Great of Russia. The period of Catherine the Great's rule is often considered the golden age of the Russian Empire and the Russian nobility, and she was seen as an 18th century empress and a powerful figure. She was also seen as a strong woman and would not get overly emotional over trivial matters. This emotional strength was put to the test when one day whilst lying in her bed, she was approached by worried servants who claimed that they had just seen her enter the throne room. Catherine immediately got out of bed to investigate, and as she entered the throne room, saw that her doppelganger was sitting peacefully on the throne. Catherine immediately ordered her guards to shoot at her doppelganger, but the bullets would no doubt have passed through her apparition. Unfortunately for Catherine the Great, seeing her own ghostly image would prove to be a bad omen, and she died of a stroke a short time later. Number 5. Sir Frederick Rash. British MP Rash was due to attend a parliamentary debate in 1906 when he came down with the flu and was bedridden. No one expected to see him that evening. Sir Gilbert Parker was attending the debate and spotted Sir Frederick Rash sitting nearby and was pleased and surprised to see him. He greeted Sir Frederick and told him, "I hope you're feeling better." Rash did not react in any way and just sat there grim-faced. Seeing no reaction in his friend's face, he was obviously concentrating on the debate and thought nothing of it. When he next turned to look at Rash, he found the seat completely empty. Feeling totally confused, he searched for Rash in the lobby, only to find that no one had seen him pass by. However, after having discussions with his fellow parliamentarians, he realised he was not crazy. It turns out others had seen Rash as well, giving credibility to Parker's claim. When he later discussed the event with the real Rash, who it turns out had never left his sickbed, he was not in the least bit surprised because he had really wanted to take part in the debate, so to him it made sense that his spirit had decided to attend on his behalf. His family, however, were not happy about the whole episode, fearing the doppelganger was a bad omen. After that incident, however, Sir Frederick Rash became annoyed by fellow parliamentarians who kept poking him with their fingers to make sure he was real. In this case, the appearance of his doppelganger did not turn out to be a bad omen, and Rash lived on for many years. Number 4. Percy Shelley. Percy B. Shelley was a brilliant poet, although he is mainly remembered as the husband of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. One evening, Shelley saw a figure of a man standing over his wife's bed with his hands about her throat. He then saw that the figure was himself. It's interesting to think that if Mary Shelley had woken when his hands were at her throat, it could well have been her inspiration for Frankenstein. Shelley confessed to Mary that he'd seen his doppelganger many times. The most recent occasion had been a few days earlier, but in the daytime. The spectre came towards him on the terrace and actually spoke and asked him how much longer he meant to be content. Unfortunately for Shelley, seeing his doppelganger was a bad omen, and he drowned in a sailing accident in 1812. As is often the case, Percy's doppelganger was also witnessed by his wife's close friend Jane Williams, who saw it passing her window on a route frequently walked by the real Percy. This route would lead to a dead end, where he never returned. As she was witnessing this, the real Percy was not at home. Number 3. Queen Elizabeth I. Queen Elizabeth I was known to be charismatic, level-headed and smart, and would have shown no interest in the paranormal. However, in 1603 she claimed she had witnessed her doppelganger lying flat in her bed, motionless. According to the Queen, her apparition was lying in her bed, looking pallid and corpse-like and laid out for presentation. As discussed in previous cases, when a person sees their doppelganger, it could mean their impending doom. And for Queen Elizabeth I, this was certainly the case, and she died soon after. Number 2. Guy de Maupassant. De Maupassant was a famous 19th century French writer, and towards the end of his life, he claims to have regular contact with his doppelganger. This spectral twin not only talk to him, but actually sat down and started dictating a short story to him. De Maupassant claimed that one of his last stories was written by his own doppelganger. The story his apparition dictated to de Maupassant was The Hoddia, a creepy tale of a man whose sanity is slowly eroded by an evil entity that uses him as a host. De Maupassant's mental health started deteriorating soon after finishing the book. The apparition returned a few months later and on entering the writer's room looked at him with a sad expression. Then it sat down and buried its face in its hands as if in despair. Convinced that the doppelganger brought news of a disaster, the horrified de Maupassant's life further deteriorated and he died in an insane asylum a year later. Number 1. Emily Sagee. Although Emily Sagee was not famous in any way, her story is nonetheless one of the most intriguing and creepiest and had many witnesses. Emily Sagee never saw her doppelganger, but everyone else did though. Sagee worked in an exclusive girls' school. She was a very good teacher, but for some reason she kept moving from one job to another. In 16 years, she had changed positions 19 times. In 1845, Sagee was the centre of some very strange doppelganger activity. Whilst teaching in Riga in Latvia, her spectral twin was first seen by a class of 13 students who witnessed the doppelganger suddenly appearing by Sagee's side while she was writing on the blackboard and mirrored her every movement. The mysterious figure also appeared at dinner, standing behind her and again mimicked her movements. Remembering that Sagee was completely oblivious to her own apparition, despite the fact that everyone else could see it clearly. However, she did become strangely groggy and powerless during the times the doppelganger manifested, and the wraith was often seen doing things Sagee later said she'd been thinking about at that moment, suggesting that she may have had some subliminal control over it. Soon the doppelganger ventured beyond Sagee's immediate vicinity. At first, it appeared to a classroom full of students, sitting calmly in the teacher's chair while Sagee herself was outside in the garden. The few people who dared to approach the doppelganger found they could pass through it, yet it had a texture that reminded them of thick fabric. Many other events occurred during her stay in Riga. On many occasions, students and staff would see a doppelganger at 2 different places at the same time. As time went by, the apparition became a permanent fixture of the school's life, freaking people out on a regular basis. Concerned parents started removing their children from the school. Other than those disruptions, Sagee was seen as a model employee, but unfortunately the headmistress had no option but to dismiss her. It appears this phenomenon would follow her to many schools in which she taught throughout her life.